How's it going, everybody? Thanks for stopping by the channel again. On today's video, speaking of left, got my turn signal on. It's only been a block or two. Thanks for stopping by the channel. On today's video, I'm going to talk about left-hand turns and why they think they're kind of dangerous, and one of they're probably, well, to me anyways, the most sketchy situation that you can find yourself in when you're out riding. What I mean by sketchy is probably one of the most likely scenarios for you to be in an accident while you're riding. So thanks for stopping by the channel. Stick around, we'll roll the intro, and we will get to yakking about this topic. All right, so let's talk about left-hand turns. When I'm out riding, every time I come across another vehicle that's on the road that's getting ready to make a left-hand turn, whether it be crossing traffic in front of me or coming out from one of the side streets, red flags go off. I go into super high vigilant, high alert mode. And the reason for that is you can never trust another vehicle to see you while you're out on the road. So today I'm going to kind of use my little bike over here as a stand-in for a car at this little I don't know, this kind of deserted intersection. I guess it's an undeveloped part of the little town that I'm in right now, but I'm going to go ahead and use my little motorcycle just to kind of demonstrate, and it's going to be a stand-in for a vehicle kind of sitting at an intersection, just kind of representing a car sitting there waiting to make a left-hand turn in different scenarios. So if you give me just a second, I'm going to take my little bike over here and I'm going to push it over here into the intersection and get her all set up, and then we'll start talking about stuff. What you should do when you approach situations like I'm about to go over, how you handle them, what to look for when people are making left-hand turns, and the reason why you need to be so vigilant when you're approaching another vehicle that's making a left-hand turn. So I got my little scooter set up right there. So we're just going to pretend for the fun of it that that's no longer a Honda ADV 150. It's now a Honda Pilot or a Civic or an Accord, whatever. So let's start out right here. We're going to pretend that we're driving down the road and we're just along our merry way. We're going straight. And then we come across a vehicle. We're cruising down the road right here. We're either in lane position number 1, we're in lane position number 2, which is the bad part because that's where all the oil spills, or we're in lane position number 3. So we're cruising down the road, and over there we notice that vehicle over there, sitting at the intersection, waiting to turn out. So as we're approaching this kind of situation, one thing you want to watch out for is what that guy's intentions are. Guy, girl, whatever's driving the car. So you're going to want to slow down just a little bit. Make sure you're doing at least the speed limit, maybe even a little bit under, when you approach a situation like this. The reason for that being is because the slower you're going, obviously, the shorter your braking distance and the better your reaction time. So as you approach this sort of situation, one thing you can look for that's going to determine whether or not that person's going to start going is watch their front tire. So if you watch their front tire and their tire starts to move, you're going to notice that they'll want to start turning out or start turning out in front of you. And the reason why I say watch their front tire is because it's easier to spot the movements of a wheel on a car than it is to actually spot and see what they're doing with their head, what their intentions are, because they could be looking right or they could be looking left, but you're going to know immediately when that car starts to move by the movement of their tire. It's obviously it's important to also make eye contact with them and try to make eye contact with them so that they can see you coming. Now, when I'm out riding around, I'm always riding, I won't say always, but 90% of the time I'm riding with my high beams on. And that's kind of a safety issue for myself. It can be an inconvenience for other people on the road, but I don't care, because me making it home at the end of the day trumps, them being annoyed for a split second by my high beams. So as you approach this sort of situation, just make sure that you're watching the vehicle, watching the front tire, watching their head, kind of making eye contact back and forth between the two, and also kind of making sure that you're doing the speed limit, maybe even a little bit lower than that, and also make sure that you have your brakes covered. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll show you. This is what I mean by covering your brakes. As you approach dangerous situations, you're going to always want to have, you take your right hand and just kind of put it up over the top of the brake lever. Just make sure you have your brakes covered. I know this is a scooter. It doesn't have a rear brake down at the bottom. The rear brake is over here. So on the scooter, I usually cover both of my brakes as I'm approaching that sort of situation, just to be sure that if something were to happen and that car starts to pull out in front of me, that I can make sure that my reaction time is quickened and I have more time to react by having my brakes already covered. All right, now for another situation, we're going to walk across the street here and we're going to pretend like we're coming from the other direction and there's a car sitting at an intersection just like that. God, these camera angles are so wide. I walk too far back. So as we're approaching this other vehicle coming from the other direction, and let's say they're sitting there with their turn signal on waiting to make a left-hand turn, and as you're coming down the road opposite of them, you're coming this direction, you're going that direction, and they're coming this direction. Sorry. When they're sitting there, you're going to want to make eye contact with them. Make sure that they know your intentions. One thing you could do is kind of weave back and forth in your lane, and what that does is that moment or that movement kind of draws attention to you, so it makes it so that you're easier to be seen. One thing you can do is, like I said, ride with your high beams on, so it makes you more visible. What you don't want to do, though, however, if you're approaching a car that's waiting to make a left-hand turn, you don't want to flash your lights, because what that can do is give them the false kind of, like you're trying to suggest to them, like, hey, it's okay, you can go ahead and go. If you flash your lights at them, they may get that idea, because sometimes people will flash their lights at other drivers saying, go ahead. So you don't want to flash your lights at them, because that's just not a good thing to do. So make sure you either have your high beams on continuously or your low beams on. If you turn on your high beams, leave them on. Don't flash them. So as you're approaching the person wanting to make a left-hand turn over here, just keep your eye on the driver, like I said, and on the wheels. It's going to be harder to spot what a car is doing from the front, because it's going to be harder to see what their tires are doing. So just kind of keep your eye on the driver. Notice your surroundings. What I like to do, if I'm approaching a certain intersection that I know where a lot of people like to make left-hand turns, what I'll do is I'll wait and I'll kind of group up with some other cars, and just so that there's kind of a little bit of safety in numbers there. If you're out there by yourself, then obviously you want to make yourself as visible as possible. But if you can, maybe slow down or speed up and get in with a group of cars, so that you're a little bit safer traveling with a pack of vehicles, because you're going to be more visible being with that pack of vehicles. Okay, so now what do you do if you're the one wanting to make a left-hand turn? Now, I'm just going to pretend that let's say that this road just continues on, and there's going to be another lane of traffic coming back this direction over here. So when you approach an intersection and you want to make a left-hand turn, what I do is I'll come up and I'll pull up to the lane right here, and I'll be camped out in position number 1. Now the reason for that, in sitting in position number 1, is I want to make myself as visible to oncoming traffic from the other side of the road as possible. I don't want to be sitting over here in lane position number 3, because if there's rows and rows and rows of traffic, or there's another oncoming left-hand turn lane over there, the cars that are behind the person sitting in the turn lane won't be able to see you as easily. So position yourself over here in lane position number 1. That way oncoming traffic has better line of sight back to you. So if you pull up to an intersection, now we're going to put our imagination caps on again. Let's pretend that over here, right here's a traffic light. Okay, so you're pulling up to an intersection with a light right here. Okay, now when you pull up to the light, you're going to have a choice of basically where do you want to stop. Like, say if you're coming up to a red light and it doesn't have a green turn signal, or you don't have a free left-hand turn, where are you going to position yourself? Well, it's going to depend. Okay, so if I'm pulling up to a red light, left-hand turn signal, I will always put myself, if I'm in the front of the pack and there's no other cars waiting in front of me, I will put myself in lane position number 3. So I'm over here. That's different from what I just described about being in lane position number 1 with oncoming traffic coming through an intersection. Now the reason why I'm going to be sitting in lane position number 3 over here when I'm sitting at a red light waiting to turn left is for a couple reasons. Number one, being in this position right here, I've noticed if there's a traffic light up here, you're better off. You have better odds of being sensed by either the what are they, like the magnetic strips in the road, or sometimes you'll have a intersection with the camera on top of the light. You have better odds of being detected by one of those two things to actually activate, you know, the turn signal so you can make your left-hand turn. I've pulled up to intersections many times, and this is how I figured this out. I pulled up to intersections many times being in lane position number 1, and that light just won't trigger for some reason. You're just too far out of the line of sight, or you're too far off of those magnetic strips or something. But anyways, another reason for you to want to be sitting in position number 3 over here is because of cars in this direction. Let's say there's cars over here pulling out of this road and they're wanting to make left-hand turns going over to here. Well, if you're positioned in lane number 1 or position number 1 and a car is coming around this corner over here, if they cut this corner, they might run right into you because, you know, people don't see motorcycles sometimes. I've seen several videos on YouTube of guys just kind of sitting there waiting to make a left-hand turn, and a car comes out of there and bam, hits them. So it's another benefit of being in position number 3 over here, waiting to make a left-hand turn. If a car is coming out of over there and they cut that corner, they're not going to hit you. So that's the reason why I like to camp out in position number 3 when I'm sitting at an intersection with lights. Okay, not position number 1. I'm going to be in position number 3. I hope the way that I explain that kind of makes a little bit of sense. I know I'm not the best at explaining things, but I hope I come across as you know, conveying my message as to why left-hand turns are really important, that you really pay attention and kind of have your wits about you and make sure that you know, you slow down when you're approaching vehicles that are making left-hand turns, and always keep your eyes, you know, on the driver and on the front wheels of the car whenever possible. Just slow down and make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that you're safe and that you're going to be able to navigate that situation without getting hurt, because there's a lot of people out there that have been in automotive versus motorcycle crashes because of that very same scenario. Anyways, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. Stop by the channel. Ride safe, have a good day.